I was never an advocate for chemically induced escapism growing up. You know, I was a very straight edge kid. I was a good, law abiding citizen, and I got it in my head very early on that I was not going to entangle myself in the same traps and vices that I saw a lot of my peers doing. You know, these vices, they were related to certain narcotics, certain substances that were controlled, and we were told that we were never supposed to go near them in elementary school, and of course that carried on into high school for me. And like I said, I had a pretty good perfect streak with these. I did not go anywhere near these substances up until I was around 17 years old and I was at my buddy's 18th birthday party. He had a bit of a strange family, you know. It was definitely not the dynamic that I was used to. They would sort of get into the living room, sit down, and they would bust out a little thing that they had in some boxes, if you understand my meaning. And they would just roll something up and enjoy a nice smoke from time to time. And they did that all as a family, and of course it made them very close. But he not only was going to do that with his family this 18th birthday party, he was doing that with the rest of us, and it was a room full of people, you know. And of course this was my first time, so I didn't really know what to expect. The first couple of puffs acquainted me very well with the substance, I would like to say, and eventually, after a couple of hours, I felt like my fear related to the substance had subsided. I remember that walk home. That was a very strange walk home. Probably one of the strangest ones I've ever had. You know, my head was very warm. It was only like 40 degrees outside, but I felt very warm. And I was afraid that a cop would stop me because we do have very nosy cops. But at the exact same time, I did not run into any. And that was a good thing. That was definitely a good thing. I remember another situation here. Whenever it comes to talking about this substance and talking about stories relating to this substance, I feel a lot like I need to bring up this story specifically. I've brought up a little part of it in a previous one where I was talking about loose lips and how they tend to sink ships. You see, there was this one time that I had hit 2 deer at once with my truck. It completely destroyed the radiator, and I had to get a couple of buddies of mine to come and tow the truck away. And when they did that, they said, "Hey, you want to come hang out with us down by the river? We're having a bonfire." And I said, you know, I don't see why not. And like I said, I think I've told this story before. We all started rolling a little bit of something. We all started enjoying a bit of the peace pipe, and we all were just having fun. But this is where the physical symptoms came in, you know. This is where the meat of this video comes in. This is what happened to me specifically with no tolerance built up to the substance. My eyebrows became very confused. That is the only way that I can describe it. I kept thinking that if I was trying to move the fingers on my hand, that I would be able to move them there, but for some reason, every time I tried to move the muscles in my hand, I would only be able to move my eyebrows. And of course, this became an issue because I looked over at a buddy of mine, and I grabbed him by the shoulder and I said, buddy, I am just absolutely not in a good state right now." He said, "Well, maybe you could, you know, be a little bit better if you would let go of my shoulder." And I said, "I don't think I can." This was the first issue, was that I grabbed onto his shoulder and I did not know how to let go, because every time I tried to move my hand, I ended up moving my eyebrows. It was very confusing, but eventually they thought that they had an idea. They handed me a stick, or they picked up a stick and said, "Hey, here, grab onto this with the hand that you're grabbing onto his shoulder with." Now, keep in mind, in one hand, I had a beverage. In the other hand, I had my buddy's shoulder. I did not think this through because, of course, I was on a different plane of existence, but I didn't think that they were trying to hand me the stick to grab with my hand. I opened my mouth. And whenever I did that, they said, "Oh, that's pretty funny." And in my delayed reaction time, they put the stick inside my mouth sideways, and I had no option but to bite down on it because I was afraid of what would happen if it hit the ground. Now, that brings me to the second thing, is that I had a very delayed sense of what was going on around me whenever it came to movement. You know, there was a jet lag anytime I would try to do anything. I would have to think about things for a moment before I did them, and even at that, it would take a moment to process that information and a moment to carry out all that stuff. This is where the goldfish memory comes in. I call this state goldfish memory because I only had memory for 3 seconds at a time. There was enough time for realization, for reaction, and then enough for me to forget what I had just seen. And this is, you know, kind of scary when you first get this, but it was a little bit funny whenever I got this here, because I knew what I was in for to a degree. This is not the first time that this happened. First time it happened, it was horrifying. That's another story entirely. But, you know, this is just purely about the effects of the devil's lettuce on my psyche. This is also probably where I think it really speaks to, you know, the overactive imagination that I had. I forget exactly how we were talking about it, but we got to the point where we were talking about California. And there was a girl there who was from California, but I hate California with a burning passion. So I began talking an awful lot about how I hated California, and I hated how it was a third world, disgusting banana republic place. You know, I pulled out all the stops here. But it got a little bit out of hand because at some point I decided I was going to call California a disgusting cesspool, and that I hated California and all of the rest of the Pacific states of America. Now, if you don't know, the Pacific states of America are a faction in the game, in the mod Kaiserreich for Hearts of Iron 4. Now, the Kaiserreich, I won't go into the grand details. All you need to know is that it's like if the Kaiser won World War I in Germany, and because of a bunch of crazy events like FDR dying of polio early on in his life in the 20s, basically America falls into a massive multi-part civil war, effectively a balkanization of sorts. So basically, I had just stated that I hated the Pacific states of America because, you know, I enjoy the lore of this game. And right after that, I was no longer just myself. I was no longer Keyser. I was a soldier in the Second American Civil War. And from there, I began to recount exactly where I thought that I was. I was sitting on a river trying to fight off these corrupt feds and these traitorous Reds with a detachment of Minutemen who were fighting for the American Union State, for the Kingfish Huey Long, and I launched into this entire tirade, and I did not stop for like 15 minutes. Or maybe it just felt like 15 minutes, I don't know, maybe they stopped me a lot sooner. My memory of the night is a little bit iffy, to be honest. Now, they humored me something fierce, and I respect them for that immensely, because, you know, it's an interesting thing to be that high with people that you aren't normally that high with. I remember at the end of the night, they said, okay, we need to take him home, alright? So someone was going to give me a ride home. Now, there were a couple of designated drivers there. You don't have to worry. I didn't drive home in this state. So basically, I had to get from point A, my chair, to point B, the truck. And that in and of itself was very difficult. I was doing this sort of strange walk animation. I can only describe it as, looked like something out of Mega Man. Looked like some Simon Belmont type stuff. Something you'd see on the NES. That's the only real way I could describe it. A very rudimentary, very stiff walk cycle. I did that all the way to the truck, and eventually when I got in the truck, I thought, oh no, we're gonna be moving. So I did the only rational thing. I covered my mouth because I was afraid I might start throwing up, and I looked down. And I did not take my eyes off the floorboard until we got back to town. Now, when we got back to town, though, that was something else entirely. I don't know if you know this, but when you smoke a little bit of what I was smoking that night, you get hungry. You get the munchies. There was a strange feeling I've not felt since whenever we passed those golden arches. That big, beautiful McDonald's sign, I tell you. Oh, buddy. I looked at it. My mouth was agape. It was beautiful. And I looked over at the man who was driving me home and I said, buddy, my wallet is in my pocket. I have $40 in there. You can have all of it if you can get me just a couple of McChickens. He did not take me up on that offer because he's a dumb bitch. Anyways, he drives me home and eventually I go back in. I find a taco in the fridge. I was going to try to put it in the microwave, but I was afraid that I would burn the house down by forgetting it in there. I did not remember that there was a beep, so I just ate a cold taco. I hopped in a VC with a very good buddy of mine, and I started watching the Banana Splits movie. I do not remember anything from this movie, though, even though it has been sitting on my shelf opened for quite some time. Around that night, too, I also decided I was going to, do a couple of antics here or there. I remember at one point I tried playing a video game. Did not work out too well. At one point I tried to describe the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline to this buddy of mine, and I think I did a pretty good job, but that's a story for another time also. Basically put, what I'm trying to say is I definitely came face to face with the realization that I was definitely fed a lot of propaganda as a kid. I would not recommend these substances, though, for people who are, uninitiated. That's my thing. Because my experience with them, definitely a little weird. Just the fucking physical effects alone are enough to kind of skeeve me out from it, like make me reconsider if I'm going to be doing something the next morning. But, you know, what are you going to do? In this day and age, it's somewhat unavoidable, you know, the devil's lettuce. Oh, well, I hope you enjoyed my rambling about this topic. If you did, why not like, why not subscribe? Get those numbers up for me if you don't mind. I don't care if you hit the bell or not, honestly. If you want to watch the videos, you'll come back. If you want, check me out on Twitter, twitter.com/Hale_Keezer. I've been Keezer. I've never been good at outros. I'll see you next time.